I'm delighted to be here today speaking to you about women and religion and how religion affects the ordinary lives of women. Thank you for asking me to speak here today. I've been coming here to Warsaw for a few years now. Atheist Ireland attends the OSCE Human Rights Implementation Meeting that is held in Warsaw each year, and every year we raise the issue of how religion undermines human rights. Last year in Warsaw, we also had an opportunity to speak at a black protest meeting on abortion. I was delighted to be able to express our solidarity with those campaigning here in Poland. Religion has a huge effect on the lives of women in theocracies, but we do not expect that kind of interference in Western, pluralist, democratic states. The places where women are second-class citizens are always somewhere else, and not in Western democracies, and especially not in the European Union. However, in Ireland, women and children have suffered decades of discrimination and abuse, and many have died because of a religious ideology that sees women as mere vessels and having duties in the home. There is still not a separation of church and state in Ireland. Our laws reflected, and many still do, the teachings of the Catholic Church on most social issues, including reproductive rights. Those laws and social teaching had consequences, and still do, for women, but particularly women living in poverty, on low income, minors, women with disabilities, and asylum-seeking and undocumented women who cannot travel to another state for an abortion. In Ireland, from the 1920s to the 1970s, single pregnant women and girls were sent to mother and baby homes. It was mostly single women from poor backgrounds that were sent to these homes. Better off families could afford to take their daughters to England to give birth if they became what was termed fallen women. The children of these fallen women were referred to as illegitimate. There was never a home for unmarried fathers. Some of the residents of these homes were children themselves and obviously had been raped. Those mother and baby homes, such as the one in Tuam in Ireland, are now being investigated. According to one historian, in Ireland in 1940, 26% of illegitimate children were born died. It had been 30% in 1924. In England and Wales, the figure in 1939 was 8%. We hear many people blame this treatment of women on the social attitude at the time to women that were pregnant before marriage. That social attitude was informed by religious teaching in a country where priests were more powerful than the local members of parliament. There are many other scandals that I do not have the time to tell you about today. It is so overwhelming that sometimes it is hard to take on board. But it happened, and we are not yet finished with these scandals. Years ago, my mother told me that she was never discriminated against in Ireland because of her gender. I didn't believe her then, and I now wonder how could she have been so blind to the truth of the reality of women's lives in a country that she so loved. My mother was a staunch Catholic, and it became clear to me over the years that religion has the ability to blind us to the truth and to stop us from questioning and holding to account the perpetrators of injustice. While my mother was telling me that she was never discriminated against, here are 10 things that Irish women could not do in the 1970s. Keep her job in the public service or in a bank once she married. Sit on a jury. Buy contraceptives. Drink in a pub. Collect her children's allowance. Get a restraining order against a violent partner. Own her own home outright. Refuse to have sex with her husband. Choose her official place of residence. Get the same pay for jobs as men. In 1970, the average hourly pay for women was 5 shillings, while that for men was over 9. Where there was a mandatory minimum wage, the rate for a woman was 2/3 that of a man. In 1972, in Ireland, a husband sued another man for sleeping with his wife. The judge told the jury to regard the wife as a chattel owned by her husband and to compensate the husband for what he had lost, just as he would compensate him for a thoroughbred mare or a cow. We have moved beyond that level of discrimination, thanks to the dedicated work of countless women's rights campaigners over the decades. But we still have a lot more work to do before we have equality for women. We still have a clause in the Irish Constitution that prioritises a woman's domestic role and duties in the home over work, even though women now make up half the workforce. Article 42(1)(2) reads, "The state recognises that by her life within the home, women gives to the state a support without which the common good cannot be achieved. The state shall therefore endeavour to ensure that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labour to the neglect of their duties within the home." So we still have today in the Irish Constitution an article that sees women as having duties within the home. Her life is within the home. We also have Article 43(3) of the Irish Constitution, which is also referred to as the 8th Amendment. It was inserted into the Constitution in 1983, and it states that the state acknowledges the right to life of the unborn, and with due regard to the equal right to life of the mother, guarantees in its laws to respect and as far as practical by its laws to defend and vindicate that right. Ireland has one of the most restrictive abortion regimes in the world. Article 43(3) goes considerably further and gives the unborn an equal right to life with a conscious, thinking, feeling woman. A few years ago at the UN in Geneva, Atheist Ireland attended the examination of Ireland under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. The chair of the UN Human Rights Committee, Nigel Rodley, spoke about what he had heard regarding the treatment of women in Ireland. Nigel Rodley once was the chair of the UN Committee on Torture. He had heard a lot about torture and abuse over the years. He knew what he was talking about. This is a powerful extract from his closing address, and it shows what a religious ideology can do to women. Then there remains the many social issues that have been raised by colleagues. The Magdalene laundries, the mother and baby homes, the child abuse, the symposiotomy. It is quite a collection, and it is a collection that has carried on beyond any period that is hard to manage any state party tolerating. And I can't prevent myself from observing that all of them are not disconnected from the institutional belief system that has predominated in the state party and which occasionally has sought to dominate the state party. Clearly, the delegation itself has been more open in listening to the concerns of colleagues about the abortion issue. Obviously, the issue of the primary right to life of the woman as an existent human being has to prevail over that of an unborn child. And I can't begin to understand by what belief system the priority would be given to the latter rather than the former. And it is good to see that in 2013, at last, that it is being clarified. I am sorry that that clarification doesn't extend to the right to health of the woman. Life without quality of life is not something many of us have to choose between. And to suggest that, regardless of the health consequences of a pregnancy, a person may be doomed to continue with it at a risk of criminal penalties is difficult to understand. Even more so arguably for rape, where the person does not even bear any responsibility and is, by the law, clearly treated as a vessel and nothing more. Very difficult for this committee to comprehend. However, to date, nothing has changed on the ground in Ireland. Church and state continue to treat women as mere vessels and second-class citizens. You can go to jail in Ireland for 14 years if you have an abortion, or assist anyone in having an abortion. Most rapists don't get that sentence. If you have never heard of symphysiotomy before, let me give you an outline. It is hard to take this practice on board, but it is, as the UN has said, torture, cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment that was carried out on women because of a religious ideology. Symphysiotomy is a childbirth operation that effectively unhinges the pelvis. Instead of doing caesarean sections in Ireland, some doctors performed symphysiotomy. The ideology behind this was based on Catholic Church teaching. If a woman had several caesarean sections, then she was medically advised not to have any more children. She was then more likely to want to use contraception. Her only other alternative at the time was to not have sex anymore with her husband. Now, we couldn't have that, could we? So to avoid women wanting to use contraception in the future, they unhinged their pelvis instead of performing a caesarean section. Ireland was the only country in the world to do these childbirth operations in preference to caesarean section. It is estimated that 1,500 women and girls, some as young as 14, had their pelvis severed by doctors who believed in childbearing without limitation. Lifelong disability, chronic pain, mental suffering and family breakdown followed. As you can see, the institutional belief system in Ireland has touched every aspect of women's lives. Scandal after scandal has emerged, and we are not finished yet. The good thing about it now is that we are washing our dirty laundry in public. Before now it was hidden, but now women in Ireland will not be silent. Just a few short weeks ago, the UN Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women recommended that Ireland amend Article 41(2) of the Constitution in order to remove the stereotypical language on the role of the women in home. They also asked Ireland to amend Article 43(3) of the Constitution. They went on to recommend that the Irish state conduct prompt, independent investigations in line with human rights standards to all allegations of abuse in Magdalen laundries, children's institutions, mother and baby homes and symphysiotomy in order to prosecute and punish perpetrators of those involved in violations of women's rights, and to ensure that all victims and survivors of such abuse obtain an effective remedy, including appropriate compensation, official apologies, restitution, satisfaction and rehabilitative services. I'm pushed for time, so we in Atheist Ireland do everything we can to challenge the harm that results from various religious ideologies. We have recently spoken at the Citizens' Assembly. The Citizens' Assembly was set up by government to examine a number of topics. One of those topics is abortion. 100 citizen members are to consider abortion in Ireland, the 8th Amendment to the Constitution. Their conclusions will form the basis of a number of reports and recommendations that will be submitted to the Houses of the Oireachtas for further debate by our elected representatives. All the various organisations invited to speak were put in groups to formally address the Citizens' Assembly. We were put in a group of 3. The other organisations were the Catholic Church and the Church of Ireland. This put us in a position to directly contradict the input of both churches. You can see our contribution on our website. It is really important to take every opportunity to challenge the influence that various religions have on the lives of women. That also includes sex education in schools, another area that we are working on. Atheist Ireland will continue to challenge the influence the Catholic Church, and indeed any religion, has on the reproductive rights of women. We will do that domestically and internationally. we will look forward to working with NGOs such as yours that campaign to ensure that no religion has control over the lives of women and children.